Welcome back to Art Practice ASMR. In this video, I'm going to be recommending anime that are all hard to recommend. These are all shows that I think are great, but a lot of people won't try out these shows because they all have preconceived notions about them, or maybe the idea of a show is unapproachable by a lot of people. So sit back and relax and listen to these 4 anime recommendations. This first show is a classic anime from the 90s, and it's one of my personal favorites. But it's also a show that a lot of people found very unwelcoming and hard to get into. This show is called Neon Genesis Evangelion. And the base plot of this show is very cliched. The show is about a young boy who finds out that he's one of the few people who can pilot giant robots that can save the world. He gets recruited to a team of pilots, and he finds out that the team is made up of a bunch of beautiful girls who all dote on him and fall in love with him. The thing about this show is that despite its very cliched premise, it goes about it in a very unconventional way. The first episodes may seem very par for the course, but eventually it becomes a very intense psychological drama about child soldiers dealing with depression and grief and post-traumatic stress disorder. And not only is a lot of this intensity focused on the children, but it's also focused on the adults and the things that broke them down throughout their life. If this show sounds very interesting to you, that's really great, but I should probably give you a warning before you jump in head first. Because like I said, a lot of people found this show to be very unwelcoming. And there are various reasons as to why that is. One of those reasons is that this show eventually rejects normal conventions of storytelling, and it starts to go for something way more esoteric and crazy. And there are different reasons for this. One of the reasons is that the show is slowly getting more hectic to play up the problems that are plaguing the main cast of characters. When characters are going through intense psychological problems, the show will get a little crazy and show you some imagery that might be hard to understand for some people. And it starts to go into dream sequences and various other story techniques that might be a little confusing. And then there are some points where the animation becomes a little limited, or they start to reuse animation, or sometimes they even just splice in footage of real life. And you might be confused or angry by all of this, and you might start to think that the show is bad because of this. And I understand why you'd think that. But there is a reason as to why this happened. The show was actually going through some production problems at the time, and there is a lot of dispute as to what exactly was going on, whether it was budgetary things or censorship by the network that was airing the show. But for whatever reason, the production crew just had to go for a limited style for certain scenes. But then there are some scenes where the limitations are actually a stylistic choice. There are a lot of scenes that people call out for being bad animation, like the elevator scene where 2 characters just ride an elevator in silence. And you may think that this is just the staff being lazy, but if it was just them being lazy, why would they have included this scene in their remake of the movies? Why would they fully animate the same exact scene just to put it in a longer just be no reason for that. So some of the things are just people confusing stylistic choice with bad animation. But I will admit that sometimes it did seem a little, for lack of a better word, lazy, whenever they reused things over and over in the same sequence. Another thing that kind of alienated fans was that a lot of people felt like they needed a high IQ to understand the show. That there was some plot points and imagery that people thought was either too smart for them or intentionally confusing, or that the creators had their heads way too far up their asses to work on the show. And those are all things I've heard people say. But personally, I just think that this is a show where you can't turn off your brain while watching it. It's a show where you have to pay attention, and if you really want to understand what's going on, you need to think about what you watched when you're done watching the show. And I think of a lot of those things are actually why I enjoyed this show so much. But it's also because of the relatability aspect with the problems that the main cast goes through, depression-wise and all of that, is also why I enjoyed it. But even that is another reason why people found it to be alienating. A lot of people hated the main character because they couldn't relate to him. And I'd say that this is a show where it definitely is a classic, but it's not something that's for everyone. And you should watch it at your own discretion now that you know what the show's about. Anyway, now to the next one. This next show is another one of my favorites, and it is called School DXD. This anime is an ecchi series, and if you're unfamiliar with that term, ecchi is basically a word for a series that has a lot of nudity and crude humor and fan service. And you might be thinking to yourself, I hate all of those things. I am not going to give this a chance. This is just going to be softcore porn with a loose plot. And let me tell you that you are absolutely wrong about this series. Now, if you are an experienced anime fan, you might live by this rule that basically says, if an ecchi series can work without the ecchi and the nudity, then it is worth watching. And let me tell you that that rule does not apply to School DXD. School DXD couldn't exist without the nudity. But that is not a bad thing. School DXD is not your typical ecchi series. It actually has more in common with shows like Naruto or Bleach than it does with shows like Testament of Sister New Devil or To Love Ru. School DXD is more of an anime battle series than it is an ecchi harem romance. And don't get me wrong, it does have a lot of romance. That's pretty much the whole point of the show. And it does have a lot of nudity. But it's all very natural and not at all forced. And that's because the show actually integrates all of that into the plot. Typically, an ecchi show just makes a bunch of ridiculous excuses to get all of its girls naked. They usually revolve around characters making stupid mistakes that no one could ever make, and then everyone just ends up naked. But this show isn't like that. There are really two types of nudity in this. There is the romantic kind of nudity, which is good, and then there is the bad kind of nudity, which comes from the villains being crude people who are horrible. And I think it works really well like this. The good kind of nudity comes when a character tries to deepen their relationship with the main character. And it comes from a genuine romance and not some kind of bullshit plot where all the girls fall in love with him. There are actual reasons for them to fall in love. Like, he actually proves himself to be someone worth caring about. And it's for all of these reasons that this show sets itself apart from all of the other ones that you and I would probably hate. Because I'm going to be honest with you, even though School DXD is one of my favorite anime, I typically don't like ecchi shows. I feel like they're always so forced and ridiculous and just so low budget it's hard to watch. But this is a show that clearly cares about its characters, it cares about its story, and it cares about its animation. It's pretty crazy that some of my most compelling fight scenes and most compelling story arcs that I've seen have occurred in an edgy romance anime. And after you see this show, you'll completely understand what I mean. That this show is so much more than what you expect it to be. And I know I haven't given you much of what the plot is about here, but I think you should just figure that out for yourself and try watching this show. It's really worth your time, I swear. This anime is one that is completely innocent and inoffensive, yet it somehow managed to piss off a lot of anime fans when it came out. This show is called Himoto Umaru-chan, and it is about a girl who is really popular, really pretty, and a star student. But when she's at home, she is a small, annoying gremlin of a human being and an otaku. If you're new to the anime community, an otaku is basically just a Japanese word for nerd, or a geek, or whatever you want to call them. It's basically what they call their fans. And this show is basically a slice of life show about her spending time at home and playing video games and getting on her brother's nerves. The thing that pissed people off so much about it is that they felt like she was a bad depiction of otaku and that she gave them a bad reputation or something. Honestly, this whole kind of controversy around the show was entirely stupid and a complete non-issue. When I watched the show, I didn't find her to be that annoying. I mean, no more annoying than what she was supposed to be. And I definitely didn't feel like she was insulting me. But I will say that she wasn't my favorite aspect about the show. The thing that kept me engrossed in the show and the thing that kept me coming back was actually her older brother, who wasn't an anime fan at all. He was actually completely illiterate when it comes to anime and video games. What I liked so much about him was seeing the whole aspect of raising his little sister and everything that happened after their parents passed away. And it was also very interesting to see his adult life and in the workforce kind of stuff. It was also really interesting to see him as an adult trying to figure out how dating works. I don't really know why it was so entertaining, especially because I watched this show when I was still in high school. If anything, I should have related to the main character way more, but instead I just related more to her brother. And I don't know if you can hear that, but it is definitely thundering outside. Hopefully this just seems more calming, I guess. This show has 2 seasons, and I've only seen the first season. But I can say that the first season has my seal of approval of shows that are not as bad as people made them out to be. And I think that people really chilled out over time about this show, and it found its own audience when the haters all sat down and chilled out. I will say that my little sister, who doesn't really like anime at all and has nothing to do with the community, she watched this show. It was one of her first few anime that she's seen, and she really enjoyed it. So, if you don't like anime, maybe you'll like this anime. I don't know. I will say that this is one of my favorite drawings I've done in this video. And now the roof is leaking and there's water in the background. I should probably stop recording right now. Okay, it's a new day. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and there is absolutely no way that a thunderstorm will interrupt this recording. So now it is time to move on to the final anime on this list, which is one that was actually met with a ton of controversy when it came out. This show is called My Little Sister Can't Possibly Be This Cute, or something like that. It has a really long title. This show was met with a lot of controversy because it was viewed as being about incest and promoting relationships between a brother and a sister that turn romantic. And I would like to give my perspective on this show before I get into that whole mess. I was afraid to watch this show because I heard about that whole mess about it being about incest. And eventually I just had nothing left to watch, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'll just check out this show to see how bad it is. And I watched the entire first season in a couple days, and I was like, there is absolutely no incest here. What I got was a very heartwarming story about a brother and sister who are growing apart and starting to hate each other. And one day, the older brother finds out that the little sister is a closeted otaku, and that she's been hiding her entire anime-loving side of herself from her entire family and friends, and that it's something that she was actually completely ashamed of. And she makes her brother swear that he keeps it a secret, and he does. And the entire show is about her older brother helping her come to terms with this thing that she likes and this community that she's becoming a part of. And it's actually a pretty heartwarming show. And I thought that there was absolutely no way that this could be about incest, especially because the entire romance aspect of this show is about the older brother and the little sister's friend that they meet at an anime meetup. And I was like, oh, I guess people just misunderstood the show. Anyway, fast forward to a couple days ago when I was looking for references to draw this picture. I was looking at the anime wiki, and I found out that this show does have an incest aspect to it, but it is not a part of the actual broadcast show. So when I watched this after it was airing, I didn't get to see any of the horrible episodes that people were freaking out about, because the horrible episodes were released only on DVD through 2 OVA episodes. And so I can guarantee that if you watch this show and you only watch the main episodes of this show, you'll get a very heartwarming show about a brother and a sister learning to be friends. But if you want to delve into every single episode and OVA that came out for this, you might find something that's going to make you very uncomfortable. And so I am recommending this show as something that I think is great, but only the broadcast episodes of mostly just season 1. Season 2 was okay, but I didn't like it that much. So as long as you stick to the broadcast episodes, you won't see anything that will scar you. Anyway, this is the last drawing, so I just want to say thank you for watching. If you like this video, then give it a like, and if you want to see more, then subscribe. Thank you for watching.